Hello, everyone. I'm Eric D'Souza, and you are joining me today again in Crime Writers of Canada's podcast as we celebrate the nominees for the Awards of Excellence. And joining me today is my friend Charlotte Morganti. Hi, Charlotte. How are you today?
I'm great, Eric. How are you doing?
I'm good too. Charlotte has been nominated for the Best Crime First Novel, sponsored by Melanie Campbell, for her book, The Endgame, published by Half Dan Press. We get to meet a former lawyer turned part-time investigator, Gabe Gabrielli. Well, let's talk a little bit about you first. So, as I mentioned, Charlotte's very much a friend that we've met and worked together in the past. She was actually kind enough to be my second podcast guest back in September of 2023 while I was still trying to figure things out. I'm not saying I figured it out completely, but I was really a novice back then, and she took a chance by being my guest. So, thank you very much.
Oh, I didn't know it was only the second one. We had fun. I thought it was, and actually, I think it was I've only done a few podcasts, so probably it was one of my first one or two as well. So great way to dip your toe in.
Great. So you're a retired lawyer and
Yes,
hold a master's in fine arts and creative writing.
right.
Now she gets to focus on writing mysteries. She writes novels and short stories ranging from gritty investigations to lighter capers. Her short stories have appeared in Black Cat Mystery Magazine, Black Cat Weekly, and several anthologies. 2 years ago, I interviewed her when she was nominated for the Crime Writers of Canada's Best Short Story for her story, All My Darlings, published in They Die Laughing, an anthology of humorous mysteries. I'm going to leave links to both of those interviews in the notes. And we'll talk a little bit about the end game, but we'll quickly transition to your new book, Breaking News Local Heiress Dead. But since people here probably want to hear about the end game, let's talk a little bit about it. Actually, let's use your words. It's sort of like an elevator pitch. What could you tell us about the end game?
Um, it has one deadly explosion, one burned body, and one teenaged prime suspect who just happens to be Gabrielle's kid brother. So Gabe dives into an investigation of sabotage at gold exploration sites in order to save his kid brother from a murder charge. And along the way, he meets a bunch of quirky characters in a small town in the BC mountains called Chickamus, which does not exist, but looks remarkably like Rossland. And so the novel is, yes, an investigation, but it's also a story of redemption and how a person can find a new life, perhaps in a new environment.
I couldn't help but notice, though, that when I started reading Breaking News Local Heiress Dead, it was not a Gabe mystery. So is that the end of Gabe? Was that a one-off?
No, no, it is a series. I have three of the books mapped out, and so in the end game, Gabe is battling um, a wrongful accusation of murder in his past. And so his big goal is to solve that murder and clear his name, because it sort of started his slide, out of the legal profession and into the gutters and back up again. So he needs to solve that murder. And by the end of the third book, he will manage to do that. And after that, I'm not sure where the series will go. But I think it was Katrina McPherson who said she sees series in groups of three. So she will write three books that sort of take the character's arc to a conclusion, and then she will do three more that where the characters will have a different arc, which makes it, I think, less daunting. I've always thought, if you write series, how can you possibly carry a character's growth and arc through, say, like 20 books, or it's but when I think of it, okay, in threes, you can so a series of trilogies. And so I have the first trilogy mapped out for Gabe.
Two things that stick out for me is, for one, that's sort of like the formula that science fiction often uses.
Oh,
Um,
it's
so,
right.
so, so obviously it's a working formula. To tell you the truth, I think of that for my own book too. Like, I always thought of it as a trilogy. There's something about three books as that
Right.
person progresses. The other one is, a lot of times books in series work really well as standalones. But if you're thinking of books in threes, does it mean that you should start with book one?
Yeah, I think it's very helpful if you do start with book one. Um, I've read a whole bunch of series where I've started further in, and then liked it so much that I had to go back and start from book one to bring myself up to speed. I think if the author's skilled enough, you he or she can put in enough backstory into, say, book two and book three, so that people who have not yet read the previous books can get it and learn enough to follow along. And I know it's difficult, actually. I don't know what you think, but it's really difficult to know how much of that first book do you put in the second, and or does it even matter? I mean, there are some writers who, even though it's a series, each book is more like a standalone, like a distinct case. And so all they have to do is all they have to do is put in enough of the character's story up to that point, rather than the history of his cases.
I 100% agree with you. And again, it goes to sort of the expectation of the readers. Because
Mhm.
if you're thinking about, I don't know, let's say Dune, like nobody would ever read the second Dune first. You would always start from the beginning. But a lot of mystery writers or mystery readers will pick up
Mhm.
a series at any point, and there's not really that many spoilers to previous ones. I wanted to put a caution as I wrote my second book, to say, like, caution, there's spoilers in this. It's going
Ah.
to talk about the first book, and there's no way I can talk about the first book without telling you who the murderer was. So it's going to ruin book one for you if you choose to read it. I ended up not doing it, but I really, really was tempted to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, luckily, the second book in the Gabe series doesn't have there won't be any spoilers in it, because although I think readers would realize that he did manage to save his kid brother's neck, because his kid brother's still in book two. So
Excellent. Well, let's talk about the new book that you just recently put out. So this is a brand new series. I'm going to assume already going to be a trilogy. Um, and I have to tell you, I was reading it before we spoke, and I'm already hooked.
Oh,
Right
great.
from the beginning, it's really, really fun. So your new character, Olivia, I should have asked you before. French
Mm,
pronunciation or English
mhm.
pronunciation?
Mercier.
Merci. Mercier
Yeah, yeah.
subscribes to Calamity Jane's mantra: if you want to be a legend, go out and be one. What does that tell us about Olivia?
Um, she uses that expression to convince herself that she had just better get on with investigating the murder, because um, she is the prime suspect in the death of her former best friend. And she's pretty much convinced that the police aren't going to look any further. And she's an investigative reporter, so she says to herself, you know, just get if you want, if you want to do this, just get out there and do it. And so she is like Calamity Jane, in the sense that she's, her own person, and impulsive, and takes on challenges that maybe some of us wouldn't. She's impulsive and snarky, and a woman that I would love to hang out with. So, and I liked Calamity Jane, always have.
Well, she's snarky, and
Yeah.
because you're telling it in first person point of view, the snarkiness comes out, and maybe it's just me, but I enjoyed the snarkiness.
Oh, good, good.
But going back to the term legend, this, like many of your stories, takes place in a small town.
Yes.
Can you really picture yourself a legend in a small town?
Oh, I think so. Um, you can become a legend in a small town for entirely wrong reasons, and one of the one of the lines that I cut from the book was that Olivia was thinking about being a legend, and she thought, well, if she didn't solve the mystery, she was going to become a legend for being the only woman in town accused of a murder. So legend in the sense of notoriety, and uh, and I think in a lot of small towns, you can easily become a big fish because the pond's pretty small.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the process. Congratulations, first off. It is rare, unfortunately, to see a self-published author nominated for a large award. As you probably know, I'm also self-published, and
Right.
shooting for these awards is often a long shot for us. You say something in your acknowledgments. Writing may be a solitary thing, but the actual making of a novel is a collective effort. And that's maybe one of the advantages that a traditionally published author has, is they have a team, their publishing company, that's promoting them, doing sometimes like three, four edits, beautiful cover art, all the advantages that as us as individuals we may not have. So could you tell us a little bit about the collective effort, your team that helped you put these novels together?
Sure. Many of the people who helped me, I've met through Crimers of Canada or Sisters in Crime. And, as writers, develop um, you develop relationships with other writers. You all talk the same language. And so I managed to find some people, one of whom lives here on the coast, Karen Abrahamson. She, is a great second third eye, and she helped me with horses because Karen rides and I don't, and for some reason horses keep showing up in my books, and Karen would forcefully tell me what I got wrong. But she also did, she does wonderful covers, and so she helped me there. And then Marcel Dubé, who's also a member of Crime Arts Canada, she is another of the group that helps me spot the errors, fix the glitches, fill in the plot holes, and so on. And then other writers I met. I have a really good friend and a fabulous writer called Kobe Alamo, who I met through the MFA program. And she, as I was mentioning to you beforehand, she read the first draft of Breaking News and pointed to chapter 5 and said, that's your opening line right there. And, she has such a great eye for things like that, that I sat there and I was ecstatic that she had pinpointed what was, I think, a great opening. But at the same time, I was somewhat dismayed because it meant the first 5 chapters were, clearing my throat sort of thing that I then had to take and move further on in the book. But it's people like that you really need to help you. And then the other people I'll mention is Robert Dugoni, who's a very successful author in the U.S. And a writing colleague of his, Stephen James, who's another excellent writer. They run a writer's retreat sort of thing called the novel writing intensive, and it takes place over a 4-day weekend. And it's a very small group of people, and you work for 4 days with both Bob and Stephen, and they take a look at the first 50 pages of your novel and tell you what's working, what isn't working, and they use it as a teaching mechanism for the rest of the class. So we looked at, I think there were 25 of us. So we looked at the first 50 pages of 25 manuscripts. And Bob, I workshopped part of Breaking News with Bob, and he gave me some wonderful pointers. I'm not going to tell you what they are because they're spoilers, but it was great. And actually, in the okay, so in the book, there's a body in a barrel of concrete in Donner Lake, which I don't know if you know the Donner Party, but in the Sierra Nevadas, the settlers who got lost in a snowstorm. So that was the plot. And when we were sitting around at lunch one day during this retreat, and one of the fellows there said, well, how do you get a body in a barrel of concrete into a dinghy and haul it out into Donner Lake? And I was sitting here thinking, yeah, I wonder how you do that when, how much does a barrel of concrete with a body in it weigh? Turns out it weighs a lot. So he was, this fellow, Don Brobst, he was great because he sat there with me at lunch and worked out exactly how that body got into the barrel of concrete and out into the middle of the lake. And so without him, she'd still be on shore.
That's great. Yeah, so it truly is a teamwork,
Yeah,
especially when you're self-published. So again,
that's right.
congratulations.
Yeah.
Uh, so one last question for you. As we mentioned before, you have been nominated for Best Short Story
Right.
2 years ago.
Right.
This one being first novel. Does it feel different?
Um, I don't, the short story category, I think is quite hard to, I don't know how many submissions Crime Writers of Canada received, but I saw the list of who's been nominated, and they're, really good short story writers. And, some of them have been nominated for Derringers as well. And for me, I have a challenge with short stories. I tend to write long, and so my short stories get kind of wordy. So actually, I think both nominations are equally thrilling, and but that short story category, it's pretty wide. So yeah, I'm thrilled with both of the nominations, and you know,
Yeah, it's true. I think for the short stories, I mean, you're competing against, I guess, everything that came out of Black Cat for the
Mhm.
year, but also, I guess, how many anthologies came out? Like, if Sisters in Crime put out one and Crimers Canada put out one, that might be a
Yeah,
really stacked, hard year, or then some years might be a little easier. But
yeah,
first novel, I think is also a pretty big feather in your hat. Like,
it is.
it,
It is.
it
Yeah, I'm really pleased every time I look at that sticker that says finalist. I have to grin. So
Excellent. Well, we don't have to wait too much longer, approximately 2 weeks to find out who's going to win them all. So I'm going to wish you the best of luck.
thank you.
I tell
Thank you.
everyone I don't know who the winner is. So I can honestly say best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited. It's good.
As always, it's fun to talk, Charlotte, but thank you for taking time out to talk with us.
Thanks so much, Eric. It's been great.